Alright, so we're rocking on with our 1959 Axeman Anderson project here. Unfortunately, the copper bypass leaked, so I pulled it out. It's actually leaking at this joint right here. And when I originally installed the other boiler, it leaked, and it took me about 5 soldering tries to get that joint to seal up. And unfortunately, it did not seal up this time when I tried to resolder it. So I decided I'd just go with 1-inch black iron pipe around. It's not as fancy looking, but hey, it's in there and it doesn't leak. And it was what I had laying around, so I didn't have any more copper to play with, so that was kind of out of the question for last night's activities. And this morning I got to looking at it, and I know when Orby restored this thing, it was probably a while ago, so there was a couple of rust spots on the boiler and stuff, so I just taped everything up real quick and gave it a quick cleaning and a quick coat of silver, and I sprayed some shiny silver on top of it, so it should look pretty good. Next order of business today is installing the cyclone cone. This goes at the bottom of that hole, and it has to be sealed. So once we get it down in there, I got to pull the grate out to do it. Well, I probably don't actually have to pull the grate out, but that might make it a little easier. And it's held in with this one bolt, which there's a hole in the side of the boiler right there for the bolt to go through. And then once you get it in there, you gotta make sure this is sealed to this pipe. Otherwise, the cyclone separator will not work properly. Basically, if you can see that passage right down in there, that's where the gases come out of the swirl chamber. They swirl, that you can see it's pointed so that it comes out at an angle and swirls this way. And the Pope's hat sticks down into there, blocking the gases from going into the middle. So they spin until they cool, then they spin and drop down further, and eventually come up through the bottom of the Pope's hat and out the exhaust. Now, the cyclone cone, if it's not sealed around the edge at the bottom, this sits in the bottom of the cyclone separator there. If it's not sealed, some of that hot gas that's swirling around the outside can get down into the ash pan area. And what will happen then is, since the fan sucks so hard in one of these things, it'll pull that hot gas up over onto the grate right past the anthrostat and heat things up and give your anthrostat false readings. And also, the cyclone separator won't work as well if gas is leaking out around here. So that's why you got to seal that. Okay, on to the next thing. Okay, so we got our tape all off of everything, and that's pretty much how the boiler's going to look. Doesn't quite look as good as the other 1959, but hey, it's good enough. Pulled the grate out to get the cyclone cone in. It's in there, but as you can see, we got a healthy gap around the outer edge. So what we do is take our silicone, and basically you put a rubber glove on your hand and put a wad of silicone in your hand and wipe it down in there. There really isn't any other way to get it in there. So So just be forewarned, this is messy. Take a good wad, put it on your glove. Go down in there. And you've just got to feel around. So see if you can get it in the right spot. We've got some pretty good gaps to fill up in here, so it will be interesting. Shoot, this is hot too. You just keep going. Maneuver around in here a lot because, well, I don't know about you, but my hand doesn't bend certain ways anymore, so yeah, kind of move to get it to be where you need it. This one's going to take a lot because that gap is pretty big on the one side. Getting there. I'm working it down the pipe into where the gap is. Whew. This stuff stinks when it gets hot. Wow. I think we got enough on there. All right, so that's it. We're sealed up now. See a little reflection on the edge of the metal of the cone, but other than that, the outside edge is sealed. What a mess. Right, so the next order of business after getting the cyclone cone sealed up is our AHS fan assembly that we installed last year. So one problem I didn't realize we had after installing it was the this little mark here. This is actually the cam on the auger. Was actually just touching this, so it kind of ground an edge in the cam. So we're going to just take our die grinder with a carbide burr on it, and we're just going to open this up a little bit so it doesn't interfere with the cam. And when looking at it, we could probably line up some of our Axeman to AHS holes a little bit better, so we'll do a little die grinding on that too. so it's a few hours later and we have gotten our fan mounted on there and got a motor on it, wired it up, and put all the controls back up here. Actually have the boiler temperature sensor in the bung there, so let's see what happens when we turn the fan on. Oh, there you go. Sounds a whole lot better than it used to with its new shaft and no rattly fan. Blowing a healthy amount of air out of there. Probably also blowing air down out of the hole in the ash pit where the cyclone cone is. Next thing we're up to is what I do is I take a slightly larger drill bit. These are grate roller studs here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it takes an 1/8 inch cotter pin in the hole here. And what I do is I take a slightly larger than 1/8 inch drill and I drill these holes out, because I've had a lot of these things where the cotter pin just gets rusted in place, and I mean, even with a punch, you couldn't get them out. You had to drill new holes. So the other thing you do is you slather the heck out of it with anti-seize, and on the grate rollers too. This is the face that goes against that block inside of the thing, so that has to be free all the time. You don't want these to catch, because the grate will quickly wear a flat spot in them and then it'll just stick right on the flat spot and they won't roll anymore. This is one of those rare situations where way too much is better than just enough. So they're all drilled out, all slathered up with anti-seize, and ready to put the grate rollers on. Alright, so grate's in there, rollers are in there, all slathered up, cotter pins are in there. I'm going to show you something that you don't get to see often, and a lot of people don't understand how this works, the ashing underneath. So this is a shaft, and as you can see, it's hooked to a crank and a lever that's attached to the front of the grate. So as we turn this, see, it moves the grate forward, and as it spins further, it spins it backwards. Pulls it forward, pushes it backwards. Now, the steps that are in the back of the grate here, you can see the bottom side from there, they look the same up on the top, coupled with that ring at the bottom of the fire chamber. Basically slices off the ash as, you know, the grate goes back and forth when it's full of ash. I like to put a little arrow on here so I know where the grate is. Right now it's all the way back. Right now it's all the way forward. So that's that. Axeman Anderson ashing. So that's probably going to be it for today. She's all plumbed in, bypass is all in there, gauges are all on. Auger motor doesn't work yet and isn't installed yet, but fan motor is.